everybody. Thanks for listening. This is Jason from the LEO Network podcast. Sitting here with me tonight is Josh Nelson, owner, CEO of Force Frontier Training Group. And I think we're going to have a great discussion about training, about survival, and about what causes somebody to see a need in the law enforcement community and respond accordingly to that need, creating a training atmosphere that gets people a little bit better suited to do their job and react a little more appropriately to these contemporary times from what the public expects to see out of competently trained peace officers. Before we get started, I want to give a little shout out to our sponsor tonight. We are sponsored by Campbell Harris Security Equipment Company. CSECO.com is their website. Give them a check out. What they have here is they are purveyors of density meters and scanners for interdiction type work. If you are a canine officer and you work in narcotics, if you are on a drug task force, or if you are a simple street cop who wants to go out and wants to find drugs, and you know that there are limitations to how far you can search and the time which you can do it, density meters are a great way to get around some of those things. They do not violate the Fourth Amendment. They are pretty much open to easy use, and they can give you some quick results. So if you want to save time, you want to find some results from the areas you think that you should be looking, natural voids, tires, packages, things like that. As long as you have the right to be there and the time and the ability to look them over, a density meter is the shortcut and a winning edge. So give them a look. Campbell Harris Security Equipment Company, CSECO.com. Great website. I have a lot of different options for you out there, and I think a lot of the products are affordable, from the simple one-time purchase for the person who was interested in working interdiction, all the way up to the departmental purchase of multiple items. So thanks to them. Now on to our guest. We have Josh Nelson here with us tonight, like I had mentioned. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you making time out. I'm trying to connect this thing for us to get together. I realize what a busy schedule is like, and being recently retired from law enforcement, I don't have that pressure anymore, and I remember very fondly of trying to make ends meet on being a cop, being a husband, being a dad, being, whatever it is, coach, and trying to find time to sit down and talk about other endeavors is tough, but you carved it out. I appreciate it, and I think we should have a good discussion on what is it that you have going. So I tell you, for now, I'm going to hush, and I'd like for you to tell me a little bit about yourself. On a professional scale, what caused Force Frontier Training Group to come to be, and where you see it going, and then we'll dive into it, and we'll kind of break it apart and find out what we have with it.
Yeah, no. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And LEO Network I love what you guys are doing. If I had access to something like that when I was a rookie, save me a lot of time. That's for sure. Always looking for training. So really inspired by those that have, coached me. I think that's how it ultimately ends up as you navigate life. And for me, a big inspiration for me was Jeff Pedro, even before I got into law enforcement. He was kind of a local legend. He did a lot of the training in the area, owned his own company, founding member of the SWAT team I now serve on. So I definitely want to give him a shout out, because he paved the way for me getting into law enforcement, and then ultimately kind of coming full circle and starting my own company. I'm a police officer. I work the road, so I'm a patrol guy through and through. I love the guys that do the investigation stuff. It's just not for me. I kind of fell into this tactical area, and that's kind of where I find passion in the job. So yeah, I work the road. I do SWAT on the side, and I have some certifications throughout that, different things I'm responsible for at my department, to include defensive tactics, use of force instructor, certified through the Department of Homeland Security, and firearms instructor. So I definitely found my way throughout law enforcement, really, again, going into that tactical realm, which is I just love micro adjustments that building those skills and abilities. And if I can pass that on to other people as well, it's something I'm all about. I work 50 plus hours a week, and on top of that, try to run a company, Force Frontier, and I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't passionate about it. So yeah, if I could, Force Frontier is just it's a culmination. It's not me. I have no desire to be somebody on social media or be famous or anything like that. It's a culmination of guys like Mike Martin, Michael Haberman, Ben Nip, Bobby Hammonds, and Brian Klein, and myself, that are all within that, in that organization. It's also helped from guys like my good friend Brandon Money with Priority One Drones, my wife Kelly, and Renee Martin, who does a lot of our, video work, so we can look professional on the internet.
Well,
And
I'll tell you right now, without jumping in unnecessarily, your website is legit. So I was there earlier today. It is forcefrontier.com, correct?
yes, sir.
Yeah, it's legit. It's a legit website. From the minute I got there, and I want to give it a shout out. I want to redirect people to there, and I'm sure you'll be able to do that as well. But from the minute I got there was no mistake of what I was looking at and what it was about. Of course, it opens and there is, I believe it's a picture of you and somebody else, and it looks like you're about ready to spar, which gives a pretty good, clear indication that this is a website that is a different type of training. Although there's a lot of companies and people that specialize in weaponless defense and personal defense. One that does both, and what I mean both is you are doing weaponless and firearms related training. You're combining them together. I was pretty interested by it, and I hung out there for a bit. And in doing so, I ended up on your instructor bios. And what I will say is, not knowing the people the way that you do, but just reading their bios and kind of just judging by the way they carry themselves. I mean, you got some hitters on your team, and by that, I mean that's a compliment. These are people that obviously take their profession very serious, take their ancillary duties such as SWAT or canine handlers. I saw you had a handler on there, little near and dear.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that, but it brings a diverse training group to your cadre, and I think that's where credibility starts. So with that, I mean, I just wanted to jump in and say, hey, for a first-time guy that wandered over there, found the website, I was immediately hooked into it. I was there for probably 30 minutes. So anybody that's not sure, forcefrontier.com, give them a look. And I'm sorry, Josh, didn't mean to cut you off, but back to you.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, and that's why we're able to do the type of training we do, is because we have we have the cadre to do that. Guys from diverse backgrounds, like Michael Haberman was in the German Special Forces and wound his way up over to Ohio to where we work now. And, he's a SWAT sniper, just a unique background. We got, obviously we have the Marine on there, Ben Nip, and other guys like Bobby Hammond's just one of my main training partners on the mats. Somebody I go to for ideas and different things that we're kind of exploring in the realm of defensive tactics. And the rest of the guys are just phenomenal group. That's why we're able to do what we do, and again, that's why I wanted to actually do this company full going forward, because we just have the crew to do it.
Yeah. So have you always had when I'm talking about weaponless defense and personal defense and ground tactics and things like that, I'm alluding largely to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Is that traditionally what you're based off of?
Absolutely based in jiu-jitsu 100%, but I do have, I would say, differences that we, again, when we go to the mats and we're trying to explore things in the realm of law enforcement, from our experiences, from, body cam footage, whatever we can take from, we try to, utilize. And I think this push for Brazilian jiu-jitsu and law enforcement is I think really good for the profession, because it takes away the need to always go to your taser, always go to one of your tools. And I think weapon dependency is a major issue in law enforcement, and something that I think can easily be redirected. I don't want to say corrected, but we can redirect that, approach, I think, just by, offering out this type of training or getting guys involved in jiu-jitsu. I mean, it's blowing up. What I will say is, we also recognize when something might be better. So for us, a large part of our curriculum, as far as takedowns go, is 100% rooted in Greco-Roman wrestling. And then when we get to the ground and we want to stay on top, the whole goal of law enforcement is different than maybe sport jiu-jitsu or even sport wrestling. So we like the folk style wrestling pins. We want to hold this person down until ultimately we get backup arrives. And you can see very quickly from some of our classes that when you have that person pinned, it makes the job of the second, third officer when they come into handcuff a lot easier. So I would say it's definitely rooted in jiu-jitsu, but we also deviate from that somewhat. We don't 100% go all in on jiu-jitsu. Okay. We also recognize when other things might be better.
So what was your background prior to law enforcement? Were you a wrestler? Were you in martial arts?
Not at all. I was maybe a yellow belt in Taekwondo. I don't
I
know
think
when I was a kid.
everybody was. I think I might have been.
Everybody
I
got
might
to
even
that
made
point.
yellow belt.
Right. So, no, not at all. It wasn't until I was in law enforcement. I was kind of given this opportunity to be a defensive tactics instructor very early on. And it was something that I think just based on my approach to the job and demeanor and everything, they felt comfortable with me putting me in that position. And I'm very grateful for that because it was a big risk. I didn't really have anything to prove myself up until that point. And
Well,
then,
some might say that's a risk, but others might say that that's actually the blessing that they're looking for. So many things that we train out in, the best people that perform at their highest are people that don't come with preconceived notions, aka shooters, motor cops. People that walk into those things and think they know what they're doing prior to getting there. You may find them harder to train and yet more susceptible to their egos
yeah,
causing them obstruction that they otherwise wouldn't have had. So maybe it was the fact that you are kind of the quiet, professional that they liked and put you in that role, knowing that you would grow with it.
yeah, I think that was, we have a sergeant that's, kind of just taking the training to the next level. It was at zero before, and now he's got it to a point where it's just kind of a well-oiled machine. So it makes it easy for guys like me to step in and just, you know, they gives me the ability to explore things and play with things. And I don't have a whole lot of oversight on me. And I think that's what expedited this whole process because I wasn't really given those restraints that a lot of departments, you know, have a lot of say in it, I guess, and you try to run it up the chain and it gets
Yeah.
checked by, however many different supervisors. Where for me, I was just told, put on the training. And throughout that, I was able to, I guess, like I said, expedite the process because instead of being a DT instructor for 15 years, but maybe I taught once a year, I was doing the DT instructor thing for 5 years, but I'm teaching literally every single month. And it
Right.
really brought the department up as a whole to where we're looking around at other jurisdictions next to us who are having, again, that weapon dependency or these crazy uses of
Yeah.
force that may not be necessary. And I think it also comes with it is that confidence. So when we start instilling that confidence in our officers, I think that just kind of eliminates some of those problems by itself. And then
Right.
obviously the techniques that go along with it are a great benefit.
Well, yeah. Let's start back from the beginning. So when you came into law enforcement, you didn't have any formalized training in the sense of defensive tactics. So you went through an academy, and you were taught
Mm-hmm.
basic skills, probably some basic wrestling, I would imagine, some
Yep.
baton manipulation, probably taser, ECD, whatever it is you call it, and then ultimately firearms. And so your force options are relatively few. They're very narrow in scope, and what obviously time has shown, and especially with the presence of taser, is that fewer and fewer people are taking their ground defense more seriously, and fewer people are actually taking self defense as seriously as they should because they believe that there are end all be all to problems such as the taser. When it first came out, it was a game changer. It did keep and create distance between people. And, for a while, tasers were going off like crazy, and they still do for the most part. But the reality is they were filling in that gap where a lot of people had the confidence loss and the inability to make that contact, to make it efficiently and make it safely to where they didn't injure somebody necessarily or they didn't themselves become injured. And that lack of confidence was recovered and boosted through the use of the taser because of its effectiveness. But as we saw, and in my time I was a trainer at our academy for quite a while on the tactical side, we saw taser over reliance become a real legitimate issue. And for those people that don't have the confidence, like you're saying, which training builds and which having a specific skill set develops, you tend to resort to something that you feel is really your only option. In some cases, taser's not enough, and ultimately firearms come into play. And obviously, that's what we want to avoid because not every case rises to the level of deadly force, especially if it's predetermined to be controlled through other methods such as excellent training and physical fitness. So you created the school, your own school. Obviously, you're teaching for the department and you're getting people schooled up and you're looking around and seeing obviously that you guys have a good thing going here. And then you recognize a need, obviously, and I'm guessing, but I'm thinking this is probably right on the mark. Is you saw a need to take it beyond the walls of the agency you work for because there were other people on the outside that wanted to know and learn what it was that you could teach them. Am I right, or is that
Yeah.
close?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. I think people are always interested. I mean, even the job itself, being a cop is a cool thing. You're privy to a lot of training and different things, that exposure that people are interested in. They ask you about it, right? So there definitely was some interest in it. I don't know if I was necessarily the guy for it. I have a passion for it. I like doing this stuff, and I think I have an approachable personality with leaving my ego at the door, and people pick up on that. I mean, they know when you're full of it, and and then when you know what you're talking about. And I think just because of the process that we went through, myself, Mike Martin, Bobby Hammonds, those guys that helped me out on the mats, we just kind of reached a point where we thought it would be cool to explore this. And then we have the guys on the firearm side of it as well, to where we can just make it happen. But I think, yeah, I think there is definitely a need for it. I think the self-defense aspect of it, those that want to, be better protectors, those, those mothers, those fathers, those everyday carry, that community, they want this stuff. So that was definitely an it was definitely an influence for me to do it, but it was more for selfish reasons. I wanted to work with those individuals because if you're spending your weekend with us, if you are spending your hard-earned money with us, I know you want to be there, which just makes for an awesome class. Far too
Right.
often, and you probably know this better than most, but there's a lot of cops that don't want to train.
No, they don't.
And
You're taking them out of their comfort zone.
yeah,
You're putting them in places to where they're challenged, they're exposed, and their tenure and seniority is not enough to get them through a class like that. Sometimes you got to show what you know, and if you don't, people are going to find out real fast what you're capable of. So yeah, yeah. Well, so your classes, obviously you'll teach law enforcement, but you'll also teach civilian personnel or civilian people as well.
yeah, absolutely. A lot of it ends up being early on, at least the firearm side of things, because you have that everyday community people, that want to learn more about how to handle their pistol. There is definitely interest in the carbine as well, but the pistol class is what the civilians love. However, every time I post a video about us doing our force immersion seminar, which is a combatives and force on force event that we hold for law enforcement, we get messages. When are you going to do this? When's the next one? When are you going to do a civilian one? So there's a lot of folks that want to learn the martial arts side of things, the self-defense side of things, in conjunction with their everyday carry stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of interest in it, and we're exploring that. We're trying to the hardest part is just getting host sites, and we've built a lot of relationships locally with ranges, with different companies in the area that are willing to bring us in. Maybe we have a different look on things, that we're not stepping on any toes, and
Right.
we're kind of just figuring out the logistics for all that as we end the year. But then next year we're kind of going to be full-fledged, multiple trainings every month is what our goal is.
And you're based out of the state of Ohio. Are all of your training classes presented within the state boundaries, or do you take them on the road?
So we have the infrastructure to take everything on the road. Right now we're in Ohio because we're just building that, building that community right now within our, local area. We are fully expecting to travel quite a bit next year. We have the mats, we have the training equipment, we have everything you would ever need for any of these types of classes ready to go and just load up. So we have the ability to travel. We just haven't really gotten to that point yet.
Okay, so what's the basic class? Say I'm Joe Cop. I've got 3 years on, 5 years on, whatever the case might be, 25 years on, and I found out the hard way that I don't know how to handle myself in the streets, and now I want some training, some bona fide, legit training. What is you have an intro class? What would I be signing up for? Talk me through the processes of I'm just learning about this for the first time, and what would I be getting myself into by signing up for a course?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd highly recommend our force immersion seminars. They are a 2 day, like I said, combatives and force on force event. It's my brainchild. It's I put a lot of effort into that, along with some of the other guys. I would say I don't necessarily I don't know if this is controversial or not. I don't necessarily believe in beginner courses, especially if you're a law enforcement officer. If you're a professional and you've had the academy, you jump right to intermediate and in some of the cases, advanced levels of what we're doing in force immersion. But it's because of the curriculum and the approach to it that we can do that. We layer all of our training so that we can, instill a crawl, walk, run approach. We can build up to what we ultimately want to accomplish for the day, and that is our evolutions at the end of the day. So we start out slow. We teach the basics. We work it all in. We show what a one-on-one violent encounter most of the time looks like. We can't obviously account for everything. We can play what if games and all that, but for the most part, we show what this looks like. So we teach you punch block defense. We teach you, uh, you know, low risk, high reward takedowns. We teach you pinning techniques, and we put it all together so that at the last 2 hours of the day, when we do our force on force exercises, and I call them exercises because they're not scenarios. These are skill building drills, not decision making drills. So we do it in a way that you're going to turn around and I'm going to start punching you. I have protective gloves on. We all have helmets on. We're good to go. And your whole goal is to mitigate injury to yourself, to get into a clinch position, take me down, and ultimately hold me there until our other instructor calls it. So that way you are getting realistic reps by the end of the day, but we haven't just jumped right to that. And also you're building skills because you know exactly what to expect from the force on force exercises. I think our force immersion seminars are unique and special because of our approach to it, but also because how often do you get to beat up your instructor in a class?
Yeah, not very often.
Not very often.
Usually the instructor's looking for an opportunity to show what they know as much as telling you
Exactly.
what you need to learn. But I think that takes a special instructor. That's a mark of a good trainer, is not one to expose the student beyond the learning phase and ultimately end up scarring them and sending them away with more doubt than maybe they arrived. So that's credit to having a good training foundation, understanding the benefits of bringing people in the raw and sending them out, honed. And so force immersion, they get through that. Maybe they say, man, I'm hungry and this is really what I want to do. Is there an intermediate? Or you said that you started at the intermediate, but what would be the next in the evolution?
Well, I would say it just depends on what you're trying to work on. I'm a big believer in, yeah, there might be more advanced ways of, or more advanced classes or things you could dive into. I would say that would then lead you to our combative stuff, because the whole idea behind force immersion is, you know, gaining that confidence on the road to deal with people. So I know how to pin this person. I know how to take him down. I know how to fight for my back if need be. And ultimately, that is, I guess, what we want to accomplish in our combative stuff. That doesn't mean that's where we end it, but I think that's where you jump to other subjects like weapon retention seminars, where you get real specific on it.
Okay, so you use force immersion more like a almost like a core curriculum, and then everything else
Yes,
builds off of it to the specialty that the person may be wanting to learn.
100%. You want to get better at
Yeah,
takedowns. Now we
I
can really
gotcha.
dive into that, because you've already kind of shown an ability to do that. Weapon retention seminars, maybe a little bit shorter format, where they're 2 to 4 hours long, stuff like that. Handcuffing, we do handcuffing stuff as well. That's more department specific if they want to bring us in, but a lot of people want to see the handcuffing right away, and this is something I when I started taking over the defensive tactics program at my department, I had to ask myself, what's the most important thing for officers? And my opinion is, and this is just my opinion, is the one-on-one violent encounter. Because for the most part, depending on, physical attributes and all that and who you're dealing with, for the most part, we figure it out and we get them in cuffs when enough officers arrive. But it's that
Right.
one-on-one violent encounter where your hand is forced, you have to deal with this person, and you're waiting for backup to arrive. That's ultimately that niche that I've kind of dived into. Now, you want to start talking about multiple officer responses, handcuffing procedures, arm locks that we can utilize to make that process a lot easier. I think that's where you ultimately end up after our force immersion seminar, because that shows
Okay.
the finished product.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And not everybody has the luxury of having another unit or another agency at their disposal
Exactly.
to show up. I mean,
Yes.
what are you going to do when nobody else is coming, right? And that actually goes back to old academy mantra. And I don't know if you got that in the academy, but I did.
Absolutely.
And it was, what are you going to do when nobody else is going to show? And obviously force training at the time, this was the early 90s for me, looked completely different. We relied heavily on weapon-based defense. The baton was your best friend. And, we actually had CS spray, mace, terrible stuff. But, and that evolved into OC, which works pretty dang good on cops. But it also works okay on suspects. I'm joking. I've had I had great success with it, but I've also had some negative experiences with it as well. I think anybody that uses it enough is going to have had both. And by all means, I used a lot of it for a while. But you're trained in those, and there's really nothing beyond that. Like I said, we learned a little bit of wrestling, learned a little bit of boxing. Yeah, okay, and luckily for me, I already knew what a knuckle sandwich tasted like because I grew up that way. But what are you gonna do when you can't baton them into handcuffs? You cannot pepper spray them into handcuffs. At some point, no different than holding somebody at gunpoint. At some point, there's going to be, you're going to eclipse, and something's going to have to happen. The game is going to have to change, and you're going to have to put somebody in restraints to render the situation moderately safe to where you can move on to the next phase of dealing with that person. So it's important, I do believe, and as much as you have clearly stated, that people are capable of taking care of themselves. People are capable of reducing the amount of injury they put to somebody else to make sure that custody is achieved. And obviously, in not getting hurt in the process. That's where I do firmly believe that this type of training falls right in. Because I was a guy, again, that saw the early side of it. Hey, side handle baton. Baton, 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 baton. Oh, guess what? The scenario subject gave up and is now laying down. Now I can walk up and handcuff them to render the scenario, red. I can call it clean. Well, the problem is when you get out in the field and you're using your baton, people are running, people are fighting, they're scratching, and now you're not knowing what to do with it beyond striking. And I think as a young cop, I would have really benefited from some training like this. Now, it came about, I want to say, around like the early 2000s. A couple close friends of mine started up some of this training, and they were talking about it. And at first, I really wasn't sure, how was it going to work? And because of the connotation of it being like mixed martial arts based with punches and kicks and strikes. Now, I do believe they have their place. They are an important part of the toolkit, but I think it's more about suspect control, especially when you're on the ground, and being able to position them in a way to be able to handcuff them safely or restrain them, whatever means that you're doing, in order to bring this thing to an end as fast as possible. So I guess it goes along the adage, better to take one good swing with a baton than 20 poor ones, because it's going to look terrible. You're going to waste a lot of time. You're going to expose yourself to a lot of injury, and it's just simply not going to work. So you might as well know what you're doing and get it done right the first time. So your training, I think, is spot on. I like the idea of it. I think there's a lot of cops that like the idea of it. So now I really see it as like three types. People that are trained in what you're talking about, people that are getting trained in what you're talking about. They're kind of they realize, hey, there's no more hiding from this. And then there's people that are simply avoiding it at all costs. Now, we need to bridge that gap between the people that are just starting to the people that are avoiding it. And that's the one that we want to bring. The ones we want to bring in are the ones that think they don't need it or are afraid of it. And I think a class like what you're running, to where anybody can come in and learn from the ground up. And if you're really great, speedy, fast, that's fantastic. You're going to train faster. But if you bring nothing and you have to learn from the beginning, your class can do that as well. And I think that's what's going to get students in your curriculum and help you build your business. So I really like the idea of it, and I hope that it continues to grow.
Yeah, 100%.
So, with that, let's talk about a couple things real quick. So, are you? I know you don't teach it at the school. Well, at least I don't believe that you teach it at the school. But let's talk about impact weapons just for a moment. So impact weapons have a really unfortunate downside to them, and it's that they're very visually disturbing for a lot of people. And in some hands, just much like any other types of training, it's not very effective. Certain things work, certain things don't. If you know what you're doing with them, you might be able to make a difference. But that also brings you into close contact and almost direct contact with an individual. So, where are you at in your career, and where are you at with training? Are you an impact weapon minded type of person, or do you tend to avoid that type of tool nowadays, knowing that you can do things more physically and more directly by being personally involved with somebody?
Yeah, so I would say, it's important to understand that any given day you can lose in this battle. I mean, I'm not the most physically imposing individual. There are people out there that could, rock my world. I fully understand that, and I think that's a very important training point that you are not always going to be the strongest, the most bad individual out there.
Right.
You want to be
Yeah.
capable, and you really want to be the best version of yourself. I mean, everybody's different. You just try to always improve. I think ultimately you're going to get to a point where you look back 5 years from that point, and you're going to be much further along than you were before. But with that being said, I would definitely obviously favor the hands-on approach, just simply because there was a quote in On Combat by Dave Grossman. I can't remember, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it was, at some point, regardless if I tase you, if I use my baton, if regardless of the circumstances, at some point we're going to meet face to face, and I'm going to have to go hands-on. So with that, I mean, until the technology develops to the point where you're not needed whatsoever in law enforcement, I mean, humans in general, I just think at some point you're going to have to go hands on, and that needs to be your base. However, we just did a small team SWAT takedown earlier today, and we recognize that, hey, if he does this, contingency plans, right? If he does this, we're going to use OC spray. If he does this, who's got taser? Okay, great. We have a taser on board. Awesome. Who's got the 40 launcher? You still plan for all this stuff, and it's still good to have it on you. And I think taser definitely has a place. I think OC has a place. I carry both of them. It's just situational dependent. But I think your base, your foundation has to be rooted in the ground stuff and the stand up stuff. With the wrestling and the jujitsu, I think it's just too important.
I think that's true. And the reason why I bring it up is because, like we're saying, for people that might be tuning into this that have been around for a little bit, there was a big push for baton, use, and then ultimately it became to the taser. And now it seems to be recognized that although slow moving in some regards, some people don't like the thought of direct contact. I mean, it has some negative connotations that maybe older people in the profession, maybe administrators, may not like the idea of. But the whole thought process behind it is to stop with the reliancy upon certain things that don't always work out to be the best option. And the reason why I asked you about baton is I know baton it's kind of rapidly going away, in the sense that it's not a premier or a forefront type tool. It seems that the taser still firmly sits out there as a preferred option. And to that end, switching into the taser now, let me ask you: do you still see, or do you think that a lot of your students or people that previous to your training are showing an over reliance to the effectiveness of the taser?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the profession as a whole. And it's those students that fall into that category of either they're just getting started or maybe haven't had that exposure like you were talking about before. Um, Definitely an over reliance on the taser. I would say we still have tasings periodically, but again, it's
Sure.
situational dependent. We had a situation recently, without going into too many details, where we could see inside the window, and one of our instructors pulled his taser out because he's like, well, the guy is having a bad trip on stuff. He's covered in all kinds of bodily fluids, and
Yeah.
not outside of his right mind. So it made sense, if he wasn't going to comply when he came out, he's covered in blood, all that good stuff. We're not going to deal with that. That's where the taser would be super effective. You have the time, space to be able to deploy it, and it's effective. Great. I think as law enforcement continues to progress, like, hopefully this next big push with jujitsu, takes fold. I think we're always looking for the next tool, the next thing. I even saw, you've seen this bolo wrap out there that just wraps people's
Yeah.
legs up and stuff.
Absolutely.
In
Yeah.
my opinion, very gimmicky. There may be a time and place for it, but again, that also introduces more options for the officer that is probably not, if you take the rookie, for instance, probably not as well trained as they should be, um, based on all the millions of different scenarios you could potentially face in law enforcement.
Right.
and you're just now introducing one more option to them. I do see that as problematic. I don't necessarily look at these tools as a negative by any means. Even I will say the baton, the asp that we were talking about earlier, I don't even carry one anymore. I have a glass
And
break
that's
on
why I
me.
asked.
Yeah,
Yeah, I figured it was probably not on your war bag, and that wasn't a call out. That was just the
no,
reality
yeah,
of it's just not there. My
it's just the
son,
evolution.
yeah, my son is a 3 month police officer now, and we were talking about his loadout, and he said I'm not even carrying a baton, and I thought, well, old time, like, well, you should have a baton. Well, where's your
Sure.
side handle baton at? No, it was actually, if you don't believe in the baton, then you need to get an RCB. And if you're not carrying an RCB, then you're wasting your time. That is the only baton. And that's not a product endorsement. That is fact.
Yeah.
Is that the RCB is the only option out there for you. So anyway, he's saying, no, I don't carry it. I don't carry it. We have to carry OC and we have to carry the taser. I'm not carrying the baton. I don't have enough real estate on me. I've got a body cam. I've got this. I've got that. I've got 19 magazines, and I've got this and that. All this stuff has its place. And the thing about it is exactly what you said. The more things you introduce, the more things that are present, the less likely it is you have proficiency in any given one of them, to the point to where you're going to be on the mark, effective when using it when it's needed most. But the one thing that you can always do is defend yourself through basic survival skills. And I think the type of training you're doing falls in that realm. When you get down to the whole fight or flight type of issue, those are the 2 mammalian responses to stress, right? You're either going to get out or you're going to stand your ground and get it on. And if you're going to stand your ground and get it on, then you got to know what you're going to do. And your body's going to tell you some of these things of what to do. But if you're not trained and you don't know how to use your skills or your strengths, then you're probably not going to get very far. Because there are a lot of people out there, as we will both acknowledge, that are on the other side of this coin that are training in this type of stuff. It's funny. So I take myself back a few years, more than a few years, to when I was a sergeant, and I used to review, in custody reports, and I would always look on these reports, and for some reason or another, I read the face sheets real thoroughly. And one time I just happened to notice the guy identified, the in custody identified themselves occupation as cage fighter, and of course I got a laugh out of it, right? Cage fighter. Well, okay. But then it got me looking at every other report ever that came in after, and I was shocked at how many people thought they were fighters, and they would put that down as an occupation. And so there's a lot of people that really glommed onto the MMA world. It's fun, it's exciting, it's there's a lot to watch, but there's a lot of people that are practitioners of these skills that aren't using them for the sense of public safety. They're using them for the sense of self-promotion. And they're dangerous individuals, and you got to know how to counter them. And because if not, they're going to wrap us up even faster. And then for sure, your baton, your firearm, your taser, really going to be ineffective in a situation like that. So I think knowing that not only is it a culture shift in law enforcement going to this, societal shift is also there as well. It's running neck and neck. I mean, you've seen what the UFC has done. It's just this huge multi-billion-dollar empire that came out of just a curiosity of what it looked like to put a 500-pound guy against a 200-pound guy that they knew different skills to see who would come out on top. And sometimes it was that 200-pound guy, or other times it was that 500-pound guy. But nonetheless, it sparked the interest in everybody to show what skills can do, and jiu-jitsu in particular being very valuable to self-survival. So I think that there's just a huge part. Go ahead.
I was
No,
gonna say
please
to that
do.
point too. I think even if it's something they don't train, like as let's just say everyday citizen or criminal, whatever it is, even if they just watch the UFC and I go to take this person down and tackle him, he may have seen a guillotine or a choke on somebody and knows that if I just wrap my arm around him and I start choking him, that could be an issue for us as well. So like you said, as a society, we're kind of going that direction as well. It's more popular. People are more familiar with it, and as law enforcement, we need to be aware of that as well. Just train to a higher level. Yeah.
And let's not ignore the fact, Josh, that people are not afraid to aggress this profession, like they once knew that there were boundaries and limits to what you would do in the interaction with peace officers, and now every day there's I don't care if you're on whatever social media platform you're on, you can find stories of law enforcement officers being feloniously assaulted or killed by people who are very overt in their want, will, and the means and manners by which they will aggress law enforcement. So I think people in this profession, whether you've been in 20 years, whether you've been in 20 minutes, you need to understand the fact this game is changing very fast, and this is becoming a very dangerous occupation. Well, like it once was many years ago, it is kind of coming full circle, and it's back there again. So everything you can do to up your ante, increase your survivability, I think not only do you owe it to your beat partners, to your administrators, to your, whoever it is, the society you serve, but you owe it to yourself, your family, your loved ones, and your friends to make sure that you do all that you can to be appropriately trained. And so the training, that training view is kind of what I take toward every bit of doing this job. So I do believe that if you are going to be the one who steps forward and says, "Pick me, I will serve. Put me up front." And you're going to take an oath, and you uphold that oath to the best of your ability, and that you stay trained and well versed in all aspects of your job, not just the ones that interest you. And for some, self defense or defensive tactics just isn't there. You might find guys that love the range. You might find guys that hate the range. You might find guys that don't want anything to do with anything practical or tactical because they know that's where their exposure comes from. But regardless, where your interest lies, you have an obligation legally and morally to uphold your training skills. And so getting to a class like Force Frontier and going through some training, I think is so smart. And whether an agency will put you through it or not, how much money are you willing to save or versus spend to go home another shift? There's no training too expensive when you're at that moment where you may not be coming back. You'll spend every dime that you possibly can find to make sure you get out of that situation. So if you're a cop listening to this tonight or when this plays, whenever it is, find the motivation, seek out the training, and find guys like Force Frontier and take upon their knowledge, their experience, and their willingness to bring you a product that makes you better. Because sooner or later, an opportunity, or I should say, not necessarily an opportunity, an unfortunate circumstance is going to present where it's time. And you're going to have to stand the test. And who walks out of that is really what's going to be the deciding factor. And should you have been training or shouldn't you have? And I almost guarantee we know what that answer is without even seeing the results. So, Josh, we've been over here on one side of your company the entire time, and we have not been talking about the firearms side. Now, I know I could talk about firearms through the next week. Let's jump in there for a minute. Give me a little taste of what firearms is about. You said you had a pistol course. You said you have carbine. And are you building those courses out the same way that you're building out the defensive tactics courses, in that there is no basic, or do you do those more like a pistol 100, pistol 250, and build from there? That's the gun sight model. But tell me about your training.
Yeah, I would say that we definitely take the same approach. I don't think it's. I think you have civilians that are carrying every day. They're maybe relatively familiar with their firearm. Those are the individuals we're looking for to advance their skills, their abilities throughout our courses, regardless of our courses. We have combat pistol, we have threat focused pistol, we have different forms of it. But again, it's that intermediate level, because say you're a beginner and you don't even know how the gun operates. Obviously, this isn't necessarily a course for you. You need to go to a CCW course, or maybe even get a private lesson or things like that, which we would be happy to assist with. I would just say that we're really looking for those intermediate individuals, because I don't need to go over nomenclature of the firearm for you to understand how to manipulate and operate it to a higher degree. I don't need to spend hours over, I think, more fundamental stuff, but some of that stuff is not necessarily even, I think, necessary to go over with newer shooters. That can be something they can explore later. I think for me, we're in the business of skill building. I say it all the time in our classes. I'm in the business of skill building. I want to get you better. So I think even if you are day one beginner, that's why we have extra instructors there. We can provide that one-on-one attention if necessary, if maybe you're a little bit behind in that course, but beginners are always welcome. So, those that get it, maybe they're getting it, and we, give them a pat on the back. Here's little tweaks we can make to make you a little bit better. And then the ones that, maybe fall in the category of they're a newer shooter, we have the one-on-one attention for it. I don't believe in necessarily doing it like ground level. There's a need for it. It's just, I would say, more of a CCW thing.
Yeah, for sure. So the average person coming in, not the CCW training, not the firearm familiarization training, not your NRA, day one
Right.
type course. But what about like a pistol fundamentals? Some ideas and concepts behind, equal sight, equal light, things like that. Are we talking about that for means of being more effective when it comes time to shooting? Or are they already expected to have a kind of a master, I shouldn't say master, maybe an advanced application to their presentation of the weapon, their placement of their shot? Or can we take them from they're not even hitting paper, they're safe, but they're not hitting paper to bringing them on the target? Where do you like to see your shooter show up at?
100%, all of them, all of the above. I love working with the guys that have been working it and maybe introducing new ideas. If we can provide those aha moments, like, especially with our approach to threat focused pistol, we look at, this combat defensive shooting a little bit differently, especially with the iron sights. Now, everything's going to red dots and it
Yeah.
eventually will take over all of it, but there's still principles that translate from the threat focused pistol for the iron sight people, where you have a little bit more of those aha moments where the red dot would be a little bit easier to diagnose. But there's stuff about, both that we can address. I would say that if you're brand new and you're coming in, you're safe, you have a good holster, you have a good firearm, and nothing's going to go, and you have a basic understanding of gun safety, which we cover in our beginning of our classes anyway. Um, we love working with those individuals. I think we really open their eyes to what, combat shooting actually looks like versus really honing in on the accuracy stuff. We deal with a lot of appropriate accuracy training. So we want you to shoot fast. We want you to get out of the holster fast. We want to show you how to be proficient in that manner. And then when you get up on sights, yeah, we can show you how to be a little bit more accurate, but that's not how these shootings go down. When you fire your weapon, when you pull it out of the holster, it's appropriate accuracy. There are times where you have the time and space to be able to maybe make a headshot if necessary because it's a hostage situation. That's something that we practice regularly on the SWAT team. However, it's still the same fundamentals. I just have a little bit more time to make that shot. So for us, the threat focused pistol stuff where we focus on appropriate accuracy, we are threat focused. We are not focused on our sights or overly focused on our sights. I think that's the approach we like to take. We like to really build that proficiency with your presentation, and ultimately that presentation leads to appropriate accuracy in the vital areas. If you're using a
Yeah.
USPSA target, we're dealing with that A zone, and we show how you can do that with speed and proficiency as you pull that thing out of your holster and get to work.
Absolutely. And for anybody that does training on the side, is you got to put in the reps. I mean, there's so much to it other than simply wanting it to be there. As a guy that I was a modestly good shot in my time, and then suddenly it started to go away quickly. And what was it a result of? The very thing we're talking about tonight, and it was that the fact that I wasn't training to the level or the frequency by which I used to when I would be fast and accurate, and and it starts to degrade quickly. It's a very perishable skill, firearms proficiency. And you have a carbine side too. Now, is the carbine open to everybody, or is that a law enforcement only type training?
No, absolutely open to everybody. I think those are the individuals we generally attract as those everyday, protector mindseted individuals, and I
Yeah,
love working with them. I mean, they show up on the weekends, they show up caffeinated, ready to go, and they're always excited. We've
yeah,
had maybe we've been lucky, but we've had every single class we've taught phenomenal students. We like working with them. And yeah, the carbine stuff's for everybody as well. If you are a cop and you want to improve your proficiency, it's open enrollment. Everybody's welcome. And I think everybody gains something from it. These are just principles that we've really taken and developed from the SWAT stuff, experiences with, whether it's different search warrants we've done or call outs we've done. And also just stuff you learn in the shoot house, stuff when we're on the range. It's just a culmination of everything. But again, it's also those, combat veterans like Ben Nipp, Michael Haberman with different backgrounds, different opinions on stuff that we kind of just all throw together. And it's not different opinions to the point where it would, I guess, deteriorate the training or anything like that. It's just, hey, here's one way to look at it. Here's another way. This way may work for you. And we try to approach the carbine stuff, the pistol stuff the same way. We want to layer it, and we want to
yeah.
get you to a point where at the end of the day, you try to earn a coin. And that's
Absolutely.
no easy task.
Oh, so is that your top shot coin, or is that passing a certain skill set objective?
Yeah, that's a certain time standards and certain. I don't think speed is everything, and I don't think accuracy is everything. It's a balance between both. So we try to
Absolutely.
put something together to where it is not your personal records on everything, but your draw one shot drill needs to be under, in this case, 1.5 seconds under
Yeah,
in 7 yards. Then you move on to the second stage, and we have 5 stages with our threat focused pistol class. So it's a demonstration of a lot of our principles. You're able to get the gun out of the holster proficiently. You're able to hit multiple rounds while maintaining that recoil with some of our build drills and some of our grip diagnostic stuff. And then you can show an ability to uh, shoot off sites with our compressed shooting stuff. We do a lot of stuff with compressed shooting because the fact is these shootings happened close up a
absolutely.
majority of
Yeah,
the time. So if we're presenting our gun out and ultimately closer to our threat, that's a major issue. And I think also when you're practicing your dry fire drills and everything like that, that's all we do. We present the gun up. We present the gun up. We like to show an approach where, well, we can also shoot from compressed, and we'll demonstrate it in the class where, like, I'm not on my sights and I haven't referenced anything. All I'm doing is trying to get a familiar spot, and then we'll shoot that round at 7 to 10 yards and still hit our shot and show kind of the principles behind that. But yeah, that just a culmination of everything, multiple threats as well as another thing we go over, or a moving target that can be, um, implemented in there as well. But it's a balance of everything. If you can show us a balance between speed and accuracy, proficiency, and all of these different areas, that's a big goal for this particular class. Talking about threat focused pistol, and then same thing with carbine. We're trying our performance carbine stuff. We're trying to get you. Give you the skills to present out super quick, but again, proficient. We're not, over driving or anything like that. And once we get students to that point, you can try to earn a coin. And when you don't earn that coin, you come back and you see us again.
absolutely. Yeah, you kind of leave a little bit out there.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a combo course, pistol carbine combo course yet?
Not yet. We're going to do a combat carbine course, which would implement both. It's just a matter of scheduling it. We're getting a lot of these. I really believe in the fundamentals, so I really believe in offering out like the threat focused pistol and the performance carbine are like super important classes. So we try to balance it to where those are more available than the combat carbine and the combat pistol stuff, just because um, I, I just think that's what a lot of people are looking for. At least that's been our feedback so far. But if that changes, then we absolutely get into the reloads, the cover and concealment, and we kind of get people moving and shooting. And that's a ton. I mean, that class is a lot of fun, but it's just a matter of balancing out our training, our schedules, and things like that. This is our first full year, 2023, doing training every single month. Um, 2022 was a big building phase for us. We're getting all the products we need, all the equipment we need to be able to do this kind of stuff. And then 2024 will be, I mean, we'll have all kinds of stuff available next year.
Yeah, I think you got big things coming, brother. I
I
really
only think
do.
big picture. That's
Well,
a fault of mine.
well, I guess one of the things that not all people do it, but you learn people in this profession, and some you can tell are sincere, and others you can tell are insincere. And you strike me as a legitimate trainer, and a guy that wants to put out a great product, and you want to train people for the benefit of them, not of you. Now, obviously, you grow from it as well. So,
Yeah.
in that idea, as this company unfolds, and 23 being your first full calendar year, give me an idea. What? And maybe this is too much. Maybe we're not there yet. Maybe you're a guy that plays this as it unfolds. But where do you see Force Frontier 3 years from now? Do you have big plans, or do you have objectives that are a lot more long range?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, that's the only way I can think. I'm not a day to day guy. All I can think is big picture. For us, 3 year plan. I really see this thing taking off only because in the short term, we've had overwhelming feedback from our students. We've met a lot of incredible people. We're selling the gear. We're working on coming out with our own gear as well due to the retail sponsorships that the partnerships we've been able to make with so many great companies. And you're going to see products from Force Frontier in probably in the near future, but definitely 3 years from now, 100%. We want to have online instructionals so that even if you can't make our training, maybe you're in California and you just can't make it out, or maybe we don't come through enough, we're going to have that stuff readily available online. And we want to be able to provide a ton of training and travel. So we want to be, I would definitely say the Midwest. 3 years from now, like anywhere and everywhere around there, anyone willing to sponsor us. Again, we're making these relationships as we go, but I would say that those would be the big picture plans. We're going to be, traveling a lot more. We're going to be doing the instructionals online. We're going to be, offering out a lot of products from the companies that we believe in. If we have a company or any type of product on our website, it's because we use it. There's no exception to that. That is something when I started selling other people's equipment, I wasn't going to put anybody else's stuff on there unless we actually used it, tested it, and believe in it. So, yeah, all that would be coming down the pipeline. And I would say I'm more looking forward to like a 7-8 year plan, because that's when I plan on doing it full time. I'm trying to be realistic about it as well. How can I afford to support my family and everything like that, as well as the
Sure.
guys that are helping me, because there's a lot of guys on this team. So I would say we're definitely looking to take it full time. And yeah, excited about what's to come.
Well, I think you have a concept that's definitely wanted and justified in pursuing. You mentioned quickly just the product placement on the website. What type of product are you carrying right now? If you could just give me a broad overview, so people that might be inclined to go pick up your website and take a look, what would they be finding as far as product?
Yeah, just so I don't miss out on anybody, I'm going to pull it up real quick, just
No,
because we have a
please,
lot
by
of
all means,
sponsors.
no. This is your chance.
Yeah, I would say that we have a lot of companies, especially like Ohio, and throughout this process, I'm just kind of learning about it to where we have a lot of incredibly innovative companies out here in the space of plate carriers, body armor,
Hmm.
medical supplies. That's the kind of thing we carry. The stuff within our niche of our training we carry. So I would say a big shout out to Dayton Armor. They donated plates to us 3 years ago on our SWAT team, and they are the
Fantastic.
lightest and thinnest body armor on the planet. And it's not a tagline; it is 100% fact. There's an R&D project in the military. I mean, I wear a plate every single day, a hard armor in my patrol carrier every single day, because
Oh,
it's
wow,
I'm
wow,
because I'm able to. I mean, you're
yeah.
talking about 3/4 of an inch, 1.5 pounds. It's the only. I mean, it's something that wouldn't be possible years ago, and now it is. And I
Yeah,
have level 3 protection on the road every single day. So a big shout out to Dayton Armor.
yeah.
Unit Solutions has given us incredible rifles that we can train with, and soon pistols, to where we can do this training a little bit more, at a higher level with the marking rounds and things like that. But I would say HRT. So their plate carriers, their belts. I wear it. I wore their stuff today on in my SWAT duties. Um, it's tried, true, tested. Can't speak highly enough of it. But the Dayton Armor stuff, especially for like people that don't know body armor real well, um, it's the next generation. I mean, they don't have a following yet because they're local to us, and it started out as an R&D project for tier 1 groups in the military, and now they're able to provide this stuff to civilians and law enforcement. But they will blow up. But their stuff is available on our website if you feel like supporting us as
Well,
well. So
absolutely, and bringing them up and making mention of company that you could stand behind and take their name and very very comfortably mention and support them. That's a company worth revisiting. And so, any one of the companies, Dayton, HRT, and the third was
Well, we have other sponsors like Fuji, Unit Solutions, but we do sell Live the Creed products, as well as Shellback Tactical, massive supporter
okay.
of us. I wear a Shellback Tactical carrier with me on SWAT. I love their products. HRT as
Shellback's
well,
been
but
around a while. They've been around
yeah,
a long time.
they're
So,
they're they're proven, and customer service is beyond helpful. So anytime you need something fixed or anything like that, they're phenomenal. But any of our companies that we work with are great. They've been supporters of us, like Fuji, Fight Sports. They've been supporters of us since we had 40 followers on Instagram.
I love it.
They're super big into law enforcement and training and everything like that. They believed in what we stood for, and they were willing to take a chance on us and help us out. So can't speak highly enough of our partners.
Well, and it's believable. That's the I think the most important part of it. So the whole idea, I'm going to shift just for a second about LEO Network, is that this becomes basically the drop bucket of all things law enforcement, all things training, all things really related to this whole genre of bettering the profession, of seeing it into the next decade, at least, if not further down the road. And so, with that being the idea and the mindset behind it, any one of the sponsors, which you just mentioned, if they by chance pick this podcast up and they want to come on and talk and show a product off, we are here for that. That's actually kind of the cool thing about it, is we're not going to limit ourselves to saying, no, that's not something we're interested in because we don't have a personal interest in it. I think if there's a professional need and a professional want, and definitely a place for it, that's exactly what we are here to do. So, any one of the companies you mentioned, if you pick this podcast up and you think, hey, you know what, here's an opportunity to get out there and showcase some product, this is a community opportunity here. So come on board and come see us. So I didn't want to miss that opportunity. Josh, obviously, I care to spend the time talking with you about Force Frontier, but anybody else that you are willing to carry the water for and make sure that their good name is known, they have a spot on this podcast as well, and I would really like the opportunity to speak with them. So, with that, Josh, I've got a really good idea about your company, fundamentally what you're about, where your passion lies, the group of trainers that you work with, the services that you offer, and where you see yourself further down the road now. But maybe just this time, I'll put my administrator hat on. Captain Doherty is sitting here again thinking, you know what, I want this training for my guys and my gals. I want this for my agency. What would it take for an agency to get you to travel? Tell me some of the things that I would need. What would I would have to have a facility, a contract. I mean, just kind of give me a rough overview of what it takes to bring you on board to be somebody that takes care of my officers.
You need an open room. Depends on what we're doing, but if you have an open room, we got the mats, we have all the protective equipment, and if we're trying to develop those officers, for the defensive tactics type of stuff, or CQB or whatever type of training they're wanting, that's all they need. I mean, obviously email us and we can work out, logistics and all that. But when I started this, I wanted to be able to provide everything. And I didn't want a reason not to do training because I didn't have mats I could bring with me, or, limitations that we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, certain departments have. And I wanted to make sure we had all the boxes checked. If we agree upon a price and you email us and you want us there and you have space for it, that's all we need. That's all we require. It obviously is easier if you have mat space. We just worked with a department locally to where they had phenomenal mat space. And obviously that made our jobs a lot easier, but that's not a limitation. So if we need to bring stuff, not a problem.
And on the firearm side, I'd obviously have to have an outdoor range. Do I need a classroom? Anything of the sort for
Nope.
Covering the front side?
I'm all about I'm all about getting on the range. I'm not interested in the classroom. Let's get to shooting.
Right.
I'm joking, but there's obviously
I hear you.
People have to understand, you got to buy into the why, and we have to give our why for the students to buy into it. So obviously there's a discussion, the classroom portion of it, but it's not required. No, I want to get on the range. I want to go shoot. I want to see what these guys are about. And if we have anything to offer them, we're going to get them into a spot where we're seeing that evolution throughout the day. I mean, I guarantee you 1 to hour 8, you are going to, take something from the class. It doesn't matter what the subject is, because we stay within our realm. We stay within our niche. We stay within our capabilities. And the guys I have with me, we know what we're talking about. I mean, these guys are doing the job. They're as up to date as possible. They're doing the job. They may teach a class that day. They may have worked the night before. They may work the night, that night after the class. And they just know what they're talking about. So hour 1 to hour 8, you're going to get something from our classes. And it's because it's all about preparation. Everything's about preparation. So we try to test this stuff out, make sure it works, and then we're not going to give you something that is, we're not going to half-ass anything.
No, absolutely not. Doesn't strike me as such. So the class is done. As a student, I'm walking away with a certificate, I would assume, saying that I completed X amount of hours, meeting the curriculum requirement for graduating whatever class it is that you're holding. So I have that. I can take that back to my agency, put that in my training records, and possibly meet some of the requirements for whatever state it is that I'm working. So Josh, so picking things back up, we're talking about kind of the overall big picture. I think that you're poised for agencies large, you're poised for agencies intermediate and small, and probably budgets that fall in between. Good training is not cheap. I'll be the first to say that, but it's worth every bit of spending on, because it is ultimately down the road. And I will put that administrator hat back on. It's liability reduction, and it's taking care of people in the distance and preventing lawsuits and preventing unnecessary uses of force, and most importantly, preventing injury. And all those things are financially, impactful and really are largely avoidable. So, to the credit of the training you're putting together and what it is that you're trying to do about keeping everybody at a modest pace to where they're effective, to where they can learn, to where they can take something back, apply it in the real world, and come out as winners in a very positive way, which does not favor one side over the other. It looks like it's a very well thought out and well practiced form of training. I think that's the way to go. And the way I say that is because, again, that administrator hat is on. And what you're doing is, it may cost me a little bit up front to put my staff through your training. And I'm not talking about your price being high or low. I'm just talking about it existing. But the reality is that's money well spent, because down the road, if you don't spend it up front, if you don't front load, you will pay on the backside, and you will pay a lot larger sums that your budget, be it smaller, modest, or enormous, isn't ready for and unanticipated. Most agencies don't have budgets that cover civil liability. That comes out of operational costs, and that hurts because that's less gear, that's less training, that's less, just basic efficiency when you have to start paying for things like that. Not to mention the negative press and the real drawbacks that law enforcement can start working harder on avoiding. And some of that is recognizing training gaps, training needs, deficiencies in specific personnel. And, I think this training would apply just as well to a line person as it would to a supervisor. And I say sergeants that are out there, corporals or lieutenants, if you're on the field as watch commanders, know the difference of a properly trained officer and one that isn't, and start recognizing the need to make up those gaps. Push this information forward, get people in classrooms, build survivors, build good cops, build practitioners. And, I firmly believe, like as I was saying earlier, regardless of what the interest is, you have to be a master of your craft. You said, I want to do this, put it on me. And when you do that, you have to uphold your end of the bargain and always bring your best. And Josh, I sense that's what Forest Frontier is doing. I would love to come out and see you guys. I'm the state over, over to the west. Not too far of a drive. Maybe I can find my way out there, come out there, do a little shooting with you guys, and hone up on some skills that have sadly deteriorated over time. I like to blame these. I can't see as well as I used to. Well, red dot everything, right? You don't need glasses
That's
when
right,
you need a red dot.
Right.
So even I red dot, So hey, it's coming to everybody sooner or later. With that, obviously I've had a lot to say over the last couple of minutes, but I want to acknowledge again your time and give you a very specific thanks, and thank you to your staff, although they weren't present, for doing what they do. We are glad partners of yours, and we have you proudly listed on our website, leonetwork.com. Get on here, hit some of these things that we have up here. So look at some of the training classes, look at Force Frontier, look at the other groups as well. Everybody's got a space. This is a weird table. It's got enough chairs for everybody. There's enough food for everybody. There's no need to fight. Come sit down, spend some time with us, pick something up, give us a recommendation. Heck, if you're listening to this and you want to be a guest and you have something to bring on the training front, or even on something that's just contemporary you think that we need to talk about as either current cops, retired cops, or whatever you are in the market that listens to this type of podcast, then bring it up and let's chat on it. Josh, and with that, I want to send, again, my sincere appreciation for you, your partners, what you do, the training that you bring. As always, with everything, be safe, brother. You do a lot of dangerous deals. You're out there with SWAT, and you're training hard, and things happen fast and without a lot of warning. But you strike me as a guy that's ready for all of them. So with that, thank you. Be careful, and I appreciate you being on tonight's show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate it, man.